This LOS is describe, calculate, and interpret management and incentive fees and net of fees returns to hedge funds. Hedge fund fees and other considerations. So before we jump into the LOS to do the calculations, this is just a quick review on the fees and returns, okay? So it is important to consider a hedge fund's fee structure prior to making an investment. The hedge fund fee structure accounts for the disproportionately high revenues earned relative to mutual funds and affects the return to investors. A common fee structure in the hedge fund market is 2 and 20, which reflects a 2% management fee and a 20% incentive fee. Additionally, funds of hedge funds typically charge a 1% management fee and a 10% incentive fee. The incentive fee may be calculated on profits net of management fees or on profits before management fees. In other words, the incentive fee is calculated independent of management fees. Sometimes the fee structure specifies that the incentive fee is only earned after the fund achieves a specified return known as the hurdle rate. The hurdle rate is frequently set based on a risk-free rate proxy, for example, LIBOR or specified treasury bill rate, plus a premium, but may be set as an absolute, nominal, or real return target. The incentive fee can be based on returns in excess of the hurdle rate, hard hurdle rate, or on the entire return, soft hurdle rate. Continuing with the fee structure, the fee structure may specify that before an incentive fee is paid, following a year in which the fund's value has declined, the fund value must return to a previous high water mark. Note that the high water mark is typically the highest value reported by the fund. The amount reported is net of fees. High water marks reflect the highest cumulative return used to calculate an incentive fee. In other words, the hedge fund must recover its past losses and return to its high water mark before any additional incentive fee is earned. Clients are not charged an incentive fee if the latest cumulative return does not exceed the prior high water mark. The use of a high water mark protects clients from paying twice for the same performance. Although poorly performing hedge funds may not receive an incentive fee, the management fee is earned irrespective of returns. So that's an important point. The management fee is always earned irrespective of returns. So now we're going to go through an example. In this example, the asset values before fees are $110 million at initiation, $102.2 million at the end of year 1, and $118 million at the end of year 2. So the fee structure is 2 and 20 based on beginning assets. There's an incentive fees net of management fees. There's a soft hurdle rate of 5% and a high water mark. So we need to calculate the net return for year 1 and for year 2. So these examples are not too difficult to calculate. The thing that you have to be careful with is reading the question very carefully. Is it saying net of fees and at beginning of the year or the end of the year? That's the key information. So in this one, it said the management fee is based on the amount at the beginning of the year, 2%. So that's easy. We know that there was 110 million at the beginning of the year. So 110 million times 0.02 equals 2.2 million, okay? Then you have to do the return net of the management fee. So we saw that the assets at the end of the year was 102.2 million. So just make the management fee negative, that's negative performance, plus the 102.2, and then we're simply going to divide by the amount that we had at the beginning of the year, the 110, and we're going to minus 1, and we'll multiply by 100 to get the nice round number, and you can see that the return net of fees was negative 9.09%, so rounding to negative 9.1%. So there's no incentive fee. The return was less than the hurdle rate, and the total fees, therefore, was the 2.2 million. Okay, so now we're going to go through the fees and the returns for year 2, okay? So down here, I just put the data again. So just as a reminder, asset values before fees, 110 million at initiation, 102.2 million at the end of year 1, and 118 million at the end of year 2. Fee structure 2 and 20 on beginning assets, incentive fees net of management fees, soft hurdle rate of 5%, and a high water mark, okay? So we know at the end of, so for year 1, just a quick review, we had 110 million times the 2% for our management fee because that was at the beginning of the year. So we did 2.2 million, okay? And then at the end of year 1, the asset value was at 102.2. So 102.2 minus the 2.2 management fee gives us 100 million at the end of year 1. Okay, so that's just a quick review. So the management, so that's the end of year 1 is the beginning of year 2. So 100 million times 2%, we don't even need the calculator. We have a 2 million, that's the management fee, okay? So now we need to check what is the incentive fee. So again, just doing it quickly, the return net of the management fee, we have 118 at the end of the year. So I can bring up the calculator, 118 million at the end of the year minus the 2 million management fee, okay, divided by 100 at the beginning of the year. And if we want to do the minus 1 times 100 to get the nice round number, then we've got a 16% return. Okay, that's net of management fees. But in this case, there is a incentive fee because we're past the high hurdle rate, the soft hurdle rate of 5%. Okay, so we need to calculate the incentive fee. How do we do that? We're going to do the 118 at the end of year 2 minus the 2 million in management fee, year 2. Then we're minusing the 110. Why did I put that in red? Because that was the amount at initiation, because in year 1 we did not have any incentive fee. Okay, so just using the calculator, 118 million at the end of year 2 minus the 2 million year 2 incentive fee minus the 110 million at the beginning of the initiation. Okay, we're going to multiply that by the 20% incentive fee, and we have an incentive fee of 1.2 million. Okay, so now the net return to investors is not that difficult. We're going to do 118 million at the end of year 2, 118 million at the end of year 2, minus the 2 million management fee for year 2, minus the 1.2 incentive fee that the fund now gets, and we're going to divide by 100. This is the year 2 return, don't forget. So the 100 was the balance at the beginning of the year 2, and we're going to minus 1 and times by 100, so we get the nice round number, and we have the return, net return to the investors after the management fee, after the incentive fee, 14.8%. Okay, so these questions are not too difficult in terms of the math, but you just need to be careful reading the fee structure. The things to look out for is that based on beginning assets, look for beginning or ending. Look for the soft hurdle rate or hard hurdle rate, understand the difference. Net of management fees or before management fees, and understand the high water mark. But we're going to go through some practice questions to get more up to speed on this. So let's do a quick practice question. A Canadian hedge fund has a value of 100 million Canadian at the beginning of the year. The fund charges a 2% management fee based on assets under management at the beginning of the year, and a 20% incentive fee with a 10% hard hurdle rate. Incentive fees are calculated net of management fees. The value at the end of the year before fees is 112 Canadian. The net return to investors is closest to A, 10%, B, 8%, or C, 9%. Okay, so let's work our way through the question. I've highlighted here a few things in green, as I said, that you need to pay attention to. And the management fee is always easy to calculate. Always do that first. So you can see 100 million at the beginning of the year. Fund charges 2% management fee based on the beginning. So you don't even need your calculator. 100 million Canadian times 2% equals the 2 million. Okay. Then they're always giving you the gross value at the end of the year. That's given 112 million. Okay. So you can calculate the return net of fees first of all. So it's going to be the 112 million net of management fees minus the 2 million management fee, and that's going to be 110 million, okay, divided by the 100 million at the beginning of the year. So just bring up the calculator. 110 divided by 100 million at the beginning of the year, and it's going to be minus 1 times 100 to make it round, and you can see that I equals 10%. So net of the management fee, I have a 10% return, okay? So you can see, there's a little bit of math here in calculating the incentive fee, but what was it doing? It was saying 112 million at the end of the year minus the 100 million at the beginning of the year minus the 2 million, timesing by 100 million times 10%, times the 20% incentive fee, you're getting to 0. But don't worry about that calculation so much. Just think about the logic. I had a 10% return net of management fee, and it's a hard hurdle rate. And the hard hurdle rate, don't forget, the incentive fee is based on returns in excess of the hurdle rate. But the hurdle rate is 10%. I'm not in excess of it. So there's 0 incentive fee. That's it. Okay? So the total fee is the 2 million. So what is our total return then? It's the 10% that we already calculated, the 110 million divided by the which is our return net of the management fee, divided by the 100 million at the beginning of the year is 10%. So the question is not too difficult. Its correct answer is A, 10%. Now, how could they make this question a little bit more difficult? Is that we'd have higher assets at the end of the year, and we'd have to calculate that incentive fee. And if it's the hard hurdle rate, it would be based on the returns in excess of the hurdle rate. Okay? So not too difficult. These questions on the fees, net of fees, etc., just take, do as many practice questions as possible. So we'll do another practice question here. Springfield Fund of Funds invests in 2 hedge funds, DXS and REF funds. Springfield initially invested 50 million in DXS and 100 million in REF. After 1 year, DXS and REF were valued at 55 million and 104.5 million, respectively, net of both hedge fund management fees and incentive fees. Springfield Fund of Funds charges 1% management fee based on assets under management at the beginning of the year and a 10% incentive fee independent of management fees. The annual net return for Springfield Fund of Funds is closest to A, 5.5%, B, 6%, or C, 5%. Okay, we're going to work our way through the solution for this, and it's not too difficult. I highlighted here in green that Springfield Fund of Funds charges 1% management fee based on assets under management at the beginning of the year. So again, calculating that management fee should be easy. You've got 50 million in the one fund plus 100 million in the second fund equals 150 million times 1.5%. Don't even need the calculator, 1.5 million. Okay, so the management fee is easy to calculate. Then it says a 10% incentive fee independent from the management fee. So what does that mean? We need that information to do the next calculation. So we need to know the net value of the fund after hedge fund fees, which they're giving to us. It's the 55.5 million plus 104.5 million, which gives us 160 million. Okay. So here, when we calculate the incentive fee, when it says independent of management fees, you can see we're not deducting the 1.5 million management fee. That's where it comes in. We're just doing 160 minus 150 times the 10%. So we have an incentive fee of 1 million, and that was independent of management fees. Okay. So our total fees was 2.5 million. So therefore, the return net of fees, we've got a management fee 1.5 million, incentive fee 2.5 million. We have assets at the end of the year 160 million minus our 2.5 million, we get 157.5 million. So if we just bring up the calculator, 157.5 divided by 150 at the beginning of the year minus 1 times 100, and we get a nice round number, 5%. The correct answer is C. Okay, so what was the important point? The important point here was the incentive fee independent of management fees. That came here when we calculated the incentive fee. It was just the ending value minus the beginning value times the 10%. We did not subtract that 1.5 million management fee. Okay, and so let's move on and do another practice question. So we'll do another practice question. A Hong Kong hedge fund was valued at Hong Kong 400 million last year. At year's end, the value before fees was 480 million. The fund charges 2 and 20. Management fees are calculated on end of year values. Incentive fees are independent of management fees and calculated using no hurdle rate. The previous year, the fund's net return was 2.5%. the annualized return for the last 2 years is closest to A, 7.9%, B, 13.6%, or C, 8.1%. Okay, this question is not so bad, but they add a little bit of a trick, CFA 101, that a question can be based on one or more LOS. And what they're asking you here for an annualized return for 2 years. So if I just jump to the end, you're going to see that we need to use the formula for the geometric return, which is 1 plus the return year 2 times 1 plus the return year 1 to the power of 1/2 minus 1. Okay, so that's we study that throughout the quant. We've seen that before. You have to get up to speed on annualizing the return for 2 years. Okay, that was the little twist to this one. Otherwise, again, we're going to read the question very carefully. It says management fees are calculated on end of year values. Remember I said beginning of year or end of year. So calculating the management fee, it's 2 and 20. That's the end of the year, 480 million times the 2%. If I bring up the calculator, 480 million times 0.02, and we're going to have a management fee of 9.6 million. Okay, that should be fairly easy. Now it says the incentive fee independent of management fee, so we've seen that now for the second time. We know that how that's going to work. We're just going to use the ending value minus the beginning of the value. We're not subtracting the management fee because the incentive fee is independent. So we know that now, and we're going to multiply that by 20% to get our incentive fee. So let's just bring up the calculator. That's really easy. 480 million at the end of the year minus 400 at the beginning of the year. And we're going to multiply that by 20% incentive fee, which is 16 million Hong Kong. Okay, so we can add the two together, the 16 million plus the 9.6, and we're going to have total fees of 25.6 million. Okay, so again, getting to that point, I don't think it's that difficult. We haven't really seen anything new. So then, net of fees, again, nothing new up to this point. Net of fees, 25.6 is our fees, so I can make that a negative sign, plus the 480, the balance at the end of the year. So we can see that we have 454.4 Hong Kong million, okay? It was our balance. So then to calculate the return, that's easy. It's going to be 454 divided by my 400 at the beginning of the year, okay, minus 1 times 100. So, I've got my return of 13.6%. And that's usually where the question ended in previous question was, what was the return for year 2? 13.6%. Got it. But this is CFA, so they're adding something to it, combining one or more LOS, which is fair game. They want the annualized return for the last 2 years, so we need to use the formula for the geometric return. So that's not too difficult. It's just, again, you have to remember that, but you should know that. So we're just going to do 1.136 times 1.025 because they gave us the return for the previous year. Okay, y to the x, 0.5 minus 1 times 100, and we get 7.90%, and the correct answer is A. Okay, so again, not too difficult. We calculated the return net of fees for year 2, 13.6%, but then they were asking for the annualized return for the last 2 years. They gave us the previous return, 2.5%. So after we calculated the return for year 2, 1 plus the return year 2 times 1 plus the return year 1 to the power of 1/2 minus 1, times 100, 7.9%. Okay, not too difficult, but a little twist, a little turn as usual. Another practice question. A British hedge fund has a value of £100 million at the beginning of the year. The fund charges a 2% management fee based on assets under management at the end of the year, and a 20% incentive fee with a soft hurdle rate of LIBOR plus 2.5%. Incentive fees are calculated net of management fees. If the relevant LIBOR rate is 2.5% and the fund's value at the end of the year before fees is 120 million pounds, the net return to investors is closest to A, 14.1%, B, 17.6%, or C, 16.5%. Okay, I think you'll find by now that these questions are getting a little bit easier, but you just need to be very careful reading what's required, okay? So again, I put in green here a 2% management fee based on assets under management at the end of the year. End of the year. They're giving us 120 million pounds at the end of the year times the 2%, okay? So again, the management fee, I don't think that's hard to calculate. It's 120 million pounds at the end of the year times our 2%. We've got 2.4 million for our management fee, okay? Then it says here that the incentive fee has a soft hurdle rate of LIBOR plus 2.5%. So the incentive fee can be based on returns in excess of the hurdle rate or on the entire return, which is a soft hurdle rate. So that's important when we calculate it says soft hurdle rate, that the incentive fee is going to be based on the entire return. That's another key thing, okay? So we have the value at the end of the year, 120 million. So we're looking at the gross return, 120 million divided by at the end of the year divided by the beginning of the year, minus 1 times 100 equals 20%. So clearly we've exceeded the soft hurdle rate, LIBOR plus 2.5%, LIBOR is 2.5%, so the hurdle rate was 5%. We've exceeded it, okay? So now we need to calculate the incentive fee. So incentive fees, again, net of management fees, it doesn't say independent. So I think you know what you need to do here. We're going to subtract that management fee in order to calculate the incentive fee. So again, that's not too difficult. We're going to do 120 million pounds at the end of the year, minus the 100 million pounds at the beginning of the year. We're going to subtract, because it says net of management fees, so we're going to subtract the 2.4, and we're going to multiply then by 20%, and we get an incentive fee of 3.52 million pounds, okay? So therefore, it's easy to calculate the total fees, 3.52 plus our 2.4 management fees, and we have a total fees of 5.92 million pounds, okay? So then, to calculate the amount at the end of the year, net of fees, we're going to take, so we've got our we can just make that plus or minus to a negative. We're going to add the 120 million, which is the amount of the fund at the end of the year, and we've got 114.08, okay? So you can see the calculator keystrokes flow fairly nicely if you know the steps. Then we're just going to divide by the 100 million at the beginning of the year, and minus 1 times 100, and you can see that we're at 14.08%, which is closest to A, 14.1%. So again, a fair bit to calculate here, and there's some areas where you can definitely make mistakes if you don't read the question carefully. But number one, calculating the management fee, easy, okay? Number two, you have to know soft hurdle rate versus the hard hurdle rate. That's really important. In this case, it's a soft hurdle rate, so the incentive fee is based on the gross return, okay? Not on the, if it's hard, it's excess of the hurdle rate, okay? Then the incentive fees was net of management fees, so we had to deduct it. So 120 million at the end of the year minus the 100 at the beginning minus that management fee because it's net of fees, not independent. And now we have our total fees, and then it's just straight out calculating, the end of the amount, 120 million minus the total fees, 114.08 divided by the beginning of the year, 14.1%. So again, if you're really up to speed on these, still can be done within 90 seconds. The key is to read the question very carefully, pick up beginning of the year, end of the year, soft hurdle rate or hard hurdle rate, and net or independent of the management fees. And I think by now you're starting to see that these are not that difficult. You just need to pay attention to details. So one last practice question to finish this LOS. Bulldog Fund is a hedge fund with a value of 100 million pounds at the beginning of the year. Bulldog Fund charges 1.5% management fee based on assets under management at the end of the year, and a 25% incentive fee with no hurdle rate. Incentive fees are calculated independent of management fees. The fund's value at the end of the year before fees is £120 million. Compared to a 2 and 20 fee structure, Bulldog's total fees for the year are A, lower, B, the same, or C, higher. Okay, again, this question is not too difficult, but they're giving us a little bit of a twist, a little bit of a turn. You need to calculate the fees and then compare it against a 2 and 20. So there's some more calculations that you need to do in 90 seconds. And again, when you're confronted with a problem that you haven't seen before, it's easy to maybe get confused. But let's just work through calculating the total fees, number one. Okay, so it's not too difficult. Charges 1.5% management fee on assets at the end of the year. So again, the end of the year, they're giving us £120 million. So I'm going to bring up the calculator, £120 million times my 1.5% management fee, 0.015, and we've got a management fee of £1.8 million. Okay, that's easy. So the next thing, it says that there's a 25, it's not 20%, it's not 2 and 20, it's a 25% incentive fee with no hurdle rate. And incentive fees are calculated independent of management fees, not net of management fees. So when we calculate the incentive fee, again, it's not too difficult. We're going to do £120 million at the end of the year minus the £100 million at the beginning of the year. It says independent, not net. If it was net, I would subtract that 1.8 million, but I'm not. And I need to multiply by 0.25, not 20%. It's a 25% incentive fee. That's why I said it's very important to read the question so carefully. And you can see I've got a $5 million incentive fee. So add the two together, don't need the calculator, have total fees of 6.8, but they want you to calculate versus a 2 and 20, okay? So we would do 2% management fee, 20% incentive, 2% on the end. You have to be consistent, apples to apples. So that's 2.4 million on the 2%. So you see it's a little bit higher management fee, but a lower incentive fee. This was the trick here. So 120 million times 2%, 2.4, and then ending minus beginning times the 20% equals 4 million. 4 plus 2.4 is 6.4. So you can see the correct answer is Bulldog's total fees for the year are C, higher. Compared to 2 and 20, they're going to be higher because 6.8 million is greater than 6.4 million. Okay? So the last thing that I'm going to do is just show you, we've gone through a little bit of a lesson in terms of how to calculate the management fees and the returns. We've done a few practice problems. The next thing that I would always do is jump straight into the ebook, check the examples, and check to see if there's more practice questions, then get into the question bank. Again, always doing questions while you're working through the material.